Good evening, beautiful woman. Welcome to Isaya's Inspiring Evenings, a podcast full of goddess series, witches' secrets, colours of women and fairy seasons to integrate serenity, abundance, joy, and magic into your life. I am Isaya Bell, creatrix, magical pragmatic inspiration mentor, tech goddess teacher, and traveling priestess. And this podcast aims to accompany you for peaceful and inspiring evenings. Isaya's Inspiring Evenings has had various iterations and styles and is published irregularly. Subscribe to the podcast on the platform of your choice to be informed of the publication of each new episode. If you like this podcast, please support it by leaving stars, blue thumbs, and reviews on whatever platform you listen to me. In 2024, there are going to be 5 series in it. For now, all different, all aiming to inspire the audience, all telling stories, each complementing each other. One series titled Women Lighting the Way is about women's stories, centering around the past or future speakers from the various Women Lighting the Way summits, adding to the virtual library of women's stories and providing a much-needed counterpoint to the many men's stories going around in our world of patriarchy. This is one of those episodes, and I am happy to invite you to listen to the story of Tracey Kissoon, recorded in 2022, entitled From Trauma and Pain to Rewiring My Brain. Enjoy!
Hi, my name's Tracey Kissoon, and I'm going to talk to you. My talk is called From Trauma and Pain to Rewiring My Brain. So this is my third attempt. So hopefully this just goes smoothly. And if it doesn't go smoothly, please forgive me. Okay, so I think you've read a little bit about me in the bio. So I just want to say a couple of things. First, just really want to thank Chris and Isaiah for inviting me to be a part of this summit. And without Isaiah and Chris, they both bring different magic, I wouldn't be here today. So huge thanks to them. Also, my sister is giving a talk from Magic to Mayhem, Trudy Malin. So I urge you to go and have a listen because it will be brilliant. I know her and it will be just freaking amazing. So I advise you to maybe listen to this one first because it may be a little drier because I'm just a quiet one. What can I say? The other thing that I'd like to say is there might be a bit of a trigger warning. And what I mean by that is that I tend to laugh things off that are quite serious or potentially quite painful. That is how I deal with it. And I'm kind of smiling. That doesn't mean I don't feel it. Okay. That's the face I show the world. What can I say? All right. So from the title of my story, you've gathered there's some issues going on. So the best way, you see me here now, and I'm I'm smiling, I'm pain-free, I'm off my antidepressants, I'm feeling joy. I feel like myself. I feel like who I'm supposed to be. And it's only when you lose yourself through pain and trauma that you take this journey back to yourself. And so it's an irony or a paradox because you return to self, and of course you've never known yourself in this sense. So, but you recognize you when you get there. That's all I'm going to say. So I haven't always been this jolly, smiling person. Let's start at the beginning. Okay, so a friend of mine described me as being born under a blue flashing light. And I love that. I don't know why. I love it. And that, in a way, I've wrapped up and put goodness into that description. So my parents were physically fighting. I don't know the details. All I know is they were physically fighting, and because of that physical fight, I arrived 2 months early. Now, I'm a lady who's in their mid-50s. I don't know about a lady, but I'm a person in their mid-50s in the UK, and we didn't have special care babies. If you were born early, you were put in a incubator, which was basically a warm cot, and the priest or equivalent was called, and nobody really expected it. So there I was, this scrawny little thing. My skin was translucent. You could see my blood vessels. I had no eyelashes. I looked like a kind of hairy white monkey because my pigmentation hadn't come through either. And they said, look, I don't think this kiddo is going to survive. But, here I am. I could breathe on my own. I was determined to get here by whatever means necessary. So little did I know that my whole childhood would be an abusive one. Now, when I say that, that word is hurled about quite a lot, and there are different levels. So I'm not comparing, I'm not competing. All I will say is that my father sexually abused me from probably before I could talk. In fact, before I could talk. And my mother emotionally neglected me. She physically abused me. So there was a lot of violence. There was a lot of withholding affection. I never got any affection. And there was just an air of I was a pain in the ass. Like more than a pain in the ass. I was hateful. I was evil. I was the devil spawned, actually. That was one that my mother used quite a lot. And so as a child, I was in and out of hospital. I failed to thrive, like Great Ormond Street. What is going on with this woman, girl, baby? I didn't thrive. I didn't reach all my kind of mental milestones, but I was like, my nickname in school was Cambo, which for any of you that remember the Pol Pot regime, that's pretty vicious. But I kind of, that was nothing compared to my primary carers not giving me any of what I needed. I mean, I must have eaten and I must have slept sometimes and I must have got something. I think if it wasn't for my having siblings, I think it would have been very, very different because my parents, particularly my mother, ironically, but also my father, my mother could kind of share out her anger and her hate for her life over the three of us. So, and our father would be blamed for everything under the sun. But I will slide in some asides. Now I've lost where I am. I shouldn't add in an aside. So yeah, so I was in and out of hospital. I was kind of doing okay at school. I liked school. Like people, other children and teachers, they were actually interested in me, and I wasn't a pain to them. So that was kind of a new experience for me. I failed to thrive. I was underweight. I was quite an anxious, quiet child, I must be honest. Just really trying not to take up any space, trying to hide, really. I mean, if you're told that by your own mother that you're a hateful waste of space and that you're useless and you're stupid, and to boot, you're ugly, and on top of that, you will never amount to anything. I mean, it was relentless. So fast forward, I'm 18. I can't wait to leave home. I decided, probably at the age of about 9 or 10, my passport out of that crazy ghetto in South London was to do good enough at school so that I could go on. And I decided that I needed a profession and I wanted to travel. My mother's prophetic words were, get those grand ideas out of your head because you're never going to amount to anything. And in a way, that kind of spurred me on. Like, I'll show you. Or the best revenge is a dish served cold. I looked around me very, very clearly. I remember this moment. I looked around me and I just thought, I don't understand why people were settling. I don't know how old I was exactly, but I just remember looking at my aunts who are very close in age, and they are my mother's sisters. I just didn't understand why everyone was settling and living this life that they moaned about. Like, surely there were ways out of this. That was always I didn't know what the answers were, but I knew what I didn't want, and that is a slightly weird way, but I think a lot of us do that until we realize, God, we can actually choose. Anyway, I digress. I'm 18. I can't wait to leave. I leave. I only move about 20 miles up the road. But I start another journey. I'm a physiotherapist. I'm loving it. I'm interacting dysfunctionally, of course, but I'm doing okay. And then I decide I want to travel, and I have adventures. Now, my adventures were a bit extreme, I will be honest. We know certainly all the research, and I'll keep bringing that in, because I decided to become a chronic pain specialist because I was so fascinated by the whole idea of trauma rewiring your nervous system, and that you're kind of preordained, if you like. There's probably another word, but I can only think of preordained right now, that predisposes you to being somebody that ends up with something like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, PTSD. Right. So back to my adventures. They were crazy. I couldn't feel anything. By the time I left home, I didn't even understand that I had needs. Okay, I kind of basically understood about feeding myself and sleeping and stuff, but I would always just be extreme, and then I'd go, oh, okay, now I can feel something, I'm alive. And this pattern continued, only unleashed more wildness, more craziness. But that's really not what this talks about. But I just want you to picture this scrawny little kid who really is clueless, but also knows how to get by. She looked after her siblings. She knows how to cook, to clean, to do the mechanics of life, to be well behaved, brought up a strict Catholic. So there's the whole guilt and the good girl thing on top of that. I become a physiotherapist, and then I go overseas and I go wild. I mean, like, no boundaries wild. And of course I get myself into situations that I don't think really I've told anybody about them, but I survived them. I remember jumping over fences, trying to escape some people that were trying to do me in Kenya. Good job I was tiny and I could leap fences. Having things stolen, just like almost trying to go down that dark road. I was always attracted to and attracting drama, violence, drugs. In a way, I just wanted to see what I could get away with, which is classic. Our 20s, we're supposed to find out where we begin and end. But I was already starting in the murky side, or the dangerous side, I guess, because I couldn't feel anything. I didn't choose the nice, sweet experiences. I did sometimes, but so you've got this young woman, tiny little thing. I was 5'2" at best, maybe 122 pounds, 7.5, 8 stone. I'm not telling you what I am now. So yeah, I'm tiny. Like, my daughter can't believe that she can't. Even when she was 15, she couldn't fit into my clothes that I wore until I was in my 40s, 50, until I hit the menopause. Let's get real here. Anyway, digressing, I took a little aside again. So fast forward, I end up in Bali. I start to learn, I start drawing slightly more positive experiences. And I start to learn about energy. fascinating. And I start to learn about, I kind of learn key Aikido, really. And that blows my mind. I also came across the book by Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, which was a game changer for me. We're talking 1991, and I got a sense of all was not well within. I was deeply, deeply unhappy and anxious, but I didn't know I was anxious. I just felt it's so hard to describe. Doomed, maybe, despite living in paradise and having this amazing lifestyle, and being able to speak fluent Indonesian. My sister Trudy came out to see me, and we, with her husband, she was newly married. My relationship was breaking down, of course. He used to, do you know, I just can't believe I have never really confronted him or got upset. This man was the love of my life. We had wild adventures, but every time it got a bit tough, he was off somewhere finding himself. And John Carrier, if you're listening, if I ever meet you again, which I kind of hope I do, because we shared a lot of things, I will hug you and slap you, or maybe the other way around, because you screwed around, mate. You just screwed around as soon as my back was turned. Like, that's not okay. Not if you're proclaiming to be in love with me and wanting to be with me. Anyway, did another little digression there. Hopefully you're following me. So I'm in Bali, living a great life and beginning to tap into the fact that all is not well and that I've pushed down these awful feelings and secrets. And my sister got married in 93, and I came over to the UK to visit, which felt very wonderful to be able to do that, to be there. I mean, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. If I had to trek, I would have done that. But we came out, and by that I mean we kind of almost were like, oh, so that happened to you as well then? I mean, that's the level at which we brushed it aside, which is crazy when I think about it. Anyway, so I go back September 93 back to Bali, and over the course of the year my life starts to unravel, like really unravel. And this love of my life, we split up. I end up really, really ill, bleeding to death, actually. And actually, at that point, because everything had fallen to pieces, my business, my relationship, it was like it just seemed too hard. Because the whole time I was there, I could almost pretend my life was okay. I was okay. Look, see, I'm thriving. I'm living. I'm fine. Anyway, so I arrive back the end of 94, feeling utterly broken, totally broken. I have almost bled to death after a minor procedure that maybe I shouldn't have had it. Well, whatever. That's another book in itself. But anyway, I didn't make the choice for this procedure in a healthy way. And so that led to me almost dying. And I'll leave that there. It's really hard to convey because I've moved and healed so much trauma. It's like it happened to someone else. So when I'm recounting this story, sometimes I'm in wonder, like, God, all of that happened, and it really did happen. And I'm probably underplaying it rather than overplaying it, because honestly, it's like it happened to someone else. But that's not to say that I didn't feel it. Like I was about 28 by then, 29, utterly devastated. I was broken physically. Emotionally, I just felt like a crock of poo, and certainly not at the end of the rainbow. my dreams, my life, the kind of things that I'd been doing, I couldn't do. So in a way, what I did to cope was I put it all in a box, all that beautiful energy work that I'd learned, all that kind of, Bali's a very spiritual place. And so that can be very dark too. People don't like to talk about that. But I really learned to meditate. I really learned to use my own inner power, which, being a medical kind of personnel and learning alongside medical students, that, it doesn't happen. But it did. The lessons in my soul were still imprinted there, and I would go on and use that. But for now, I come back to England. It's dark, it's wet, it's cold. And I put my good girl pants on and I get a job in the NHS as a physio, which is what I was trained to do. And it was okay. But God, I was lonely. I knew things weren't working well, but I just didn't know what to do. I think I saw a therapist, and her first comment, like, really? Okay, I think she was attached to the NHS, so I don't know. Not that that excuses anything. Her comment to me was, yeah, that's really unusual. I've never heard of a West Indian male sexually abusing their daughter. Yeah, like, I'm really going to make it up. Like, what a thing to say. So the first person I talked to kind of almost makes me feel like it's not true, or somehow I'm making it up. So that really put me off from seeking any help. I was just like, oh, okay. And it's not so much the sexual abuse, it's all you already feel like a piece of shit because all your boundaries have been completely abolished. You don't know what boundaries are. You no longer belong to you. Everything about what you do is, and you feel like that, I'm sure, as a child anyway, but this was a bit of a double whammy, if you like. So I do what I did, and I jacked everything in. I was in a job I didn't like. I loved the wards. I did neurology. I'm too physically small for that because a 20-stone woman. So that's how I worked it out, That's how I worked out that really let the 5'8", 5'9", 6 foot physios deal with head injuries and strokes. I'm 5'1", and I'm strong, but my spine was not ready for a 20-stone woman to land on me, and my spine like concertina. And I think really, okay, the trauma wiring started when I was a child. That's for sure. All the science tells us that it already changes your nervous system, and it's primed for fight, flight. It's always hypervigilant. So there's a kind of pre-PTSD waiting to happen. That's what all the science is telling us. And came to the Cotswolds. And I think I found, in a way, my mini Bali, if you like. I found green, I found healing, I gave myself a home. And then I could start to look at this trauma. I could make the space, the emotional space, which is basically what I did. And so I'm in my early 30s and I'm kind of doing the thing. I managed to find a job that I didn't have to be a super square, well-behaved physio. I could kind of fit in with some quirky characters, which, thank God for that. It was a community job, so I got paid to drive around the Cotswolds. The client group were adults with learning disabilities, and we just had so much fun. We sort of met somewhere, and I could really relax with this client group. I gave them my best in lots of ways, but I don't know. And the team were great. Anyway, so that was a good point. I had my own home, and I just, after that, my back was obviously, I don't know, it must have been 96-ish. my back was never the same. So slowly but surely, I'm getting paid more and more. I do all the right things. I lose weight. I become super fit at Pilates. I'm digging my own patios and lifting and unreal, like feeling amazing. Now, I could have had a scan and all of those things, but in a way, I knew in my heart it was never about that, because I recovered reasonably well from that 20 stone landing. There was a little bit of betrayal around that, because the head was somebody I went to uni with, and she just shut the door, so that got wired in. I won't be believed, running theme there. And I did all the things. I did all the yoga and the meditation, tried a bit of the self-love, and all of these things really helped me. But, there I was. I'd be pain-free for a few months, and then something would trigger it off. Now, when I say trigger it off, I don't mean digging the back garden or anything physical. And here's the kicker. So in 2000, and I think it's one, I had her. So it must have been, no, it was the end of 2002. What a dork. I should remember this. I was giving evidence against my biological father because my sister and I had plenty of reason to suspect that, to know that he was carrying on abusing young girls. He was working on but there were just too many things going on. He'd abused our stepsisters, and we're just like, you know what, it's our moral duty. We know the price that we've paid for that. So we were both giving evidence, and I had a 5-month-old, and I was still breastfeeding her, which was wonderful. But the morning I was giving evidence, my breast milk literally stopped like that. There was no sign, there was nothing. It literally, the stress of it just stopped my breast milk shut, like bang. But while I was giving evidence, I could actually hear my own daughter crying. And there was something so primal about that, giving evidence. And I have another generation with me that I had given birth to. At that moment, it was so powerful, and it will stay with me, because the more I was stepping into my truth, like it was slow motion, and the more I got to understand about that I was protecting her and I was speaking my truth. It was a spiritual experience. There was this little time warp thing going on while I was talking. And I just really said it how it was. So that's another one of my little asides. And as I was driving away, so I was staying with my mother, that's a whole nother book chapter. I started to get this pain down my neck. And that pain, so I'd have been 36, that pain would go and last another 10 years. Like I couldn't sit. I just thought, I've done too much driving, too much sitting. But no, that was, some days I couldn't, like it would wake me up at 4 and I just couldn't get comfortable. It was awful. What can I say? I became less and less of myself. And we know now, science tells us that our brain changes, like how we process our own emotions, or even temperature, sleep. It all starts to go out the window. We can't access our thinking part of our brains. We forget things. And there's a part of us that just looks for is forever guarded, our brains. our limbic brains, the ones that detect if there's any danger. It just becomes an over processor. It starts to kick off at the slightest thing and you get pain. And it's interesting looking back when I used to drive to London. Now, that's where all the trauma happened, all the family shit. And I was going back and seeing those people apart from my biological father. And bless me. It's quite interesting, isn't it? That sometimes I'd get halfway and I just have to pull over because my left leg, which is the clutch leg, just wouldn't behave. Anyhow, fast forward, I did all the things that you're recommended to do, and I went on to study what's going on in the brain. So I'm going to own the title, but I'm a chronic pain specialist. And I'm a chronic pain specialist because not only do I understand the science, I also understand the suffering. And the things that I did to get better, honestly, if somebody had said, listen, you need to wee on your hands and then do something with that, I would have done it, because it just destroys your life. You become less and less of who you are. You just don't want to do things. Everything just becomes too much. Like you're just in literally your nervous system is in constant overwhelm, and the smallest things just cause your brain to just fry and fizz, really. So the thing that I realized that nobody was explaining what I needed to do to rewire. So there are 4 parts, like roughly. And I did them all over a long period of time. Now I know you can do this much, much quicker. And of course, I have a way that I think works really well. I've been using it on patients for a number of years, really. But I like to understand what it is that I'm teaching people. So it's really only, I'd say, the last couple of years that I found the secret sauce, the bit on top, the cherry on top that gets you there. So I would say that to kind of put it together, it's really important to write your story down. And by that, I mean, from birth, what kind of birth did you have? What kind of a baby were you? Did you eat well? Were you fussy? Did you have periods of ill health? Because all of those things really matter, because they prime you. They prime you for either pain, autoimmune disease, other neurological issues, or anxiety. Like you can be wired for that. Depression, all of those things, all of them. Look, you don't have to just have one. Quite often they'll come hand in hand, and you will be misdiagnosed. But actually, you've been primed, much like I was. And that's why, in fact, it's not just the last secret sauce, it's the whole darn bit. So I find out, have they been primed? Or have they had periods of huge stress and illness? And I want to know the details, right? People come to me and, I'm getting very excited. I'm almost shouting. And they've had a car accident. And I'm like, what was going on that day, that month, that year? Because it's all important. Because they're not getting better, and they should have got better. And it's got nothing to do with compensation. It's to do with the fact that they were in an abusive relationship and their job is crap. And the accident was the icing on the cake, the thing that then their nervous system could chuck everything in the air and go, shit, what have you done now? I think the nervous system is kind of our higher self, our spiritual self, really. That just came to me as we were talking. So the story, every bit, your toxic relationships, friendships, okay, and then count how many neurotags. So, life is, in the 21st century, I'd say, is pretty intense. What are neurotags? Well, they are clusters of events that are stressful. Right now, what you think is stressful and what I think is stressful, 2 different things. It's not about me judging your stress. It's about you going, fuck, that was hard. Okay? Witnessing and having a witness. That's what I love to do for my peeps. like especially the ones that come and see me face to face. If it's appropriate, then I like people are, if they can, because not everybody wants to let go. They're still very much a medical model, but you're meant to kind of wobbly that way. You're meant to fix my biceps or my, and I'm like, no, it's so much more than that. And like there's a little signal that goes on, and they know that I'm gonna help them unpick, and I'm very clear what we're going to do and how it's going to affect them. So it's not everybody, because I'm a physiotherapist. Some people just want their calf muscle strap. So story, neurotags. So those collision points, you get rid of the neurotags. That's easy. That's easy bit, I think, because there are just so many techniques. Hypnosis. I like to do a meditation with a reflex, acupuncture to relax the nervous system. All of those things work incredibly well. But I think the really important bit, so you've got to witness neurotags, get rid of the neurotags. Sometimes, I mean, I have fun with it. I've learned that believe it or not, I like to have fun. I love to have fun with my patients. We're laughing, even during the most serious moments. We laugh crying sometimes. Sometimes we write them down on paper and rip them up, burn them. We just rip them up in small pieces because I've got a fire alarm in my bed. I've set it off one too many times. Anyhow, I'm adding water to that because I think the power of water is profound. So if you come face to face with me, you have a off the Richter experience. But you can do this with my support anyway online. It's just obviously I'll have to just give you a metaphorical hug. And then it's the rewiring, depending on what the issue is, how you rewire, and not just rewiring the movements and getting the muscles moving. That's physiotherapy bread and butter. It's actually reminding your central nervous system that you are no longer in pain. You're no longer in pain, and you've got to put some joy back and some good stuff. And then your central nervous system will start to go, oh yeah, that's how it should be. And that's what I mean about coming back to yourself, because you start to remember that inside, despite everything that's happened, we are all joyful, loving, beautiful human beings. And I think that is the perfect note. I hope you're intrigued, or you know someone that could perhaps do with my skills, or you could learn a bit more about me. There'll be links to offers, my Facebook group, yada, yada, yada. Until then, you wonderful people, thank you for listening. I hope there was a sort of thread of coherence through that. And I really, really enjoyed this. Thank you, and bye for now.
That's it for this episode. The next one is still in creation. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, if you want to support this podcast, share, subscribe, and leave stars, blue thumbs, and a review on whichever platform you listen to. If you want to be accompanied in the change processes that life offers you, if you want to live a goddess life daily and participate in the awakening of feminine energy in the world, know the secrets of witches, and apply the rituals of fairies in your daily life, contact me on my website isayabelle.com. You can also subscribe to my newsletter to be informed of all the news in the real and virtual world of Isaya. You will, of course, find this podcast on all platforms: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, etc., but also on YouTube and on my website isayabelle.com on the podcast page.